on to our next presentation. So again, it's a wonderful, more sluggish day 3. I think we're all a little lower on the energy levels today. We're blinding Steven over in the corner. All right, so what we have coming up now, we're going to do a presentation of Maya workflows, Maya 2013, some of the new stuff that's coming along. So Steven, why don't you take it away?
All right, thank you, Sean. So again, my name is Steven Rosell. I'm a technical specialist on the Maya side, and we're going to spend the next half hour or so going over a lot of different stuff, actually. I'm going to start by talking about Maya 2013, which has been out for a few months now. It came out, I guess, around May timeframe. There's a ton of new features in this latest release. It's in a lot of ways very animation-centric. There were lots of new animation features added, so I want to start on the animation side. And then we're going to end up end off with the Maya 2013 Service Advantage Pack. It's a lot of words to say. We call it SAP for short. You might have heard people say that, but it stands for Service Advantage Pack, and it's basically a. Oh, good! I get to throw shirts. Do you have the cannon? We don't have the cannon. Oh, darn. So anyway, we have several new features in this Service Advantage Pack that I want to show that are really, really cool. One is DirectX rendering directly into Maya Viewport. And the other is something called Scene Assembly. So you'll see this this level here. This is actually a game level, but it could easily apply to film sets as well. But it's basically a scene assembly tool that allows you to populate environments really quickly and kind of efficiently. So with all that said, that's kind of the stuff we're going to cover. But I want to show a quick movie just to give you kind of a point of reference for the content that we're seeing. So this is actually an internal project that we created at Autodesk called Hyperspace Madness. And what it is basically a game. It's an actual running functional game that we developed internally to kind of use as a test bed for not only our authoring tools like Maya for animation and for the modeling and for the scene assembly, but also for things like our GameWare solutions that allow you to do really high-quality lighting for game levels, as well as AI path solution for the enemy characters here that you see, as well as like the heads-up displays were created with Scaleform, which is our UI creation tool set. So basically, all of our various tools were used to create this complete game. It is running on Unreal, so it's not our actual engine or anything, but we're using Unreal, and then our tools are integrated into Unreal. The character you'll see is Sven, a.k.a. Spaceman. He's going to be kind of the hero character, not only of the game, but of the demos that I'm going to be showing here. So, by the way, Autodesk GameWare is the division that kind of runs the middleware side of our business. But I'm going to focus not on middleware. I'm going to focus on the authoring, the front-end authoring side with Maya and animation and scene assembly. So what we see here is the environment that you were seeing in the actual running game. And if I pull in here a little bit, you can see that it's a pretty detailed environment that I've got loaded. And generally the way people work, whether it's film or games, is the environment is built or assembled by one group of people, and the animation is created by another group of people, but then those have to come together at some point. So oftentimes something called file referencing is used to essentially assemble these different types of assets together. So what we did in 2013 is we basically made file referencing easier to work with and easier to manage so that you can actually get directly to file referencing without kind of needing any external editors. We used to have this external editor, not external, but secondary editor that allowed you to manage file references. Now you just go into the base editor, the outliner over here, and this is kind of your scene, your list of scene nodes, and you basically right-click in here, say create a reference, and then you just point that to another file. And actually, let me just change my sorting here. So I'm going to point that to a jog animation. So what I've got here is kind of a nest of references. So I've got my character, which is in a rig file, which is then going into an animation file, which is then going into a master scene file. So what you'll see is the character comes into my scene, but the problem is the character is not positioned in the right place. He's not positioned relative to my environment. He's running off that platform. He does have a jetpack, but this is not a flying animation. This is a running animation. So what I want to do is actually take this and apply what's called a reference edit to this. So I'm actually going to take the top node of my character, and I'm going to just kind of rotate that into place so that he's facing the other direction. Actually, I'll just rotate that to exactly 180 degrees so that he won't run off the side of the platform. And if I scrub through the animation, you can see he's running through those boxes. I actually want to push him forward a little bit so that he's actually starting out right in front of the boxes, or rather on the other side. Now I push play, and he'll just run off into the distance, eventually running off the platform, but we're going to leave it at that for now. So basically what I've done is I've added a series of edits on top of the underlying reference. So what I want to do now is actually go in and maybe make a change. So let's say somebody swaps out something in the environment, and now all of a sudden I've got these boxes here in the environment. My animation no longer works with this. If he runs, he's just going to run right through those boxes. I have no collision or anything like that set up, so he's actually going to act like a ghost and go through it. What I want to actually have him do is actually jump over it. So what I'm going to do is actually change this to a different animation file. So again, I've created a reference edit on top of this animation. So what I want to do is actually go in, I'll just grab the top node of the reference, right-click on this, go into my reference management section, and all of the things that I might need to do to a reference are here. For instance, I can manage my edits. I can go in and I can import a new file or reference a new file, or I can go in and I can replace this reference with another reference. So I'm going to switch over into my jump reference. And what that's going to do is it's going to reference a new scene with a new character. And I'm just going to hide the IK handles there because they're off into space, but we're not going to worry about that. I'll play that back, and you'll see he starts in the same position, and he runs in the same direction because he's inherited the edits that I've already applied. So it's non-destructive in that sense. I don't have to go back to the original file to make the change. I can make it at a higher level. So now what I need to do is actually take this a little bit further. I've got the orientation right, but now I have to actually go in and tweak the position of the jump. So I want to find kind of the high point of the animation, which is right about there. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to grab my master node here, my master control node, and I'm going to push this guy forward. And you can see there now he jumps over the box, which is what I want. The problem is now when he jumps, he doesn't quite clear the box. So if you take a closer look, what actually happens is he jumps over the boxes or the crates, but his foot goes right through the crates. So that's not going to work. I need to actually fix that. So in the past, what I would have to do is actually go back into the original file, modify the animation, and then bring it into my scene. Or I would have to actually import it into my scene and modify the animation here in a destructive manner. So what I want to do is do a non-destructive edit to the underlying animation so that the original animation will be intact, but I have a new kind of modified version of that here. So what I'm going to do is actually go into, and I want to show you two quick things. Actually, you can ignore what I'm doing right now, and then I'll talk about what I just did. So I'm going to show you two quick things. One is if we go into the graph editor, and we'll pull back here just a little bit, and we'll take a look at the foot. I'm going to grab the foot control there, and I can actually edit the foot control, but I'm not actually changing the animation at this point. If I try to keyframe this, it's going to give me an error because it's already got keyframes on it from the underlying reference file. If I take a look at the curves, what you'll see is I've got the curve representation of the motion, basically, of this foot, but I can't actually edit these. Typically, you want to go in and grab keys, select them, move them around, edit them. So in the past, you couldn't edit an underlying animation. You couldn't apply a reference edit to an animation. So what we did in the last release is we just made that possible so that you can actually just go in here under your animation settings and just say, please allow me to edit that reference. Save that out. Now when I come in here, I can actually grab that and I can begin to move those around. I'm actually going to turn off the tangents for now, and I'll go in and just quickly show you how I can offset this animation. So I'm going to just reset this tool and just show you a couple of options. One is if I just grab these curves, let's say I grab all these keys right here. If I move those up, what's going to happen is it's going to uniformly offset those. So all of those are being offset in the exact same amount. So if I needed to create some kind of a fall off, I'd have to go in here and I'd have to grab this key and I'd have to move that up and then grab the next key and I'd have to move that up, and that's really time consuming until I kind of create this fall off effect. What I really want to do is just automate that kind of fall off. So I'm going to grab this entire range of keys, and in the move tool, all I have to do is just switch to a linear mode. You can set that to a hotkey if you need to, if you just want to do it really quickly. But now what I'm going to do is basically find the high point of my motion, say right about there. I'll pull into the character so I can actually see his foot, and then I'm just going to take this curve, and I'm just going to create a nice little fall off there for the curve. If I grab a smaller section of the curve, then I can kind of minimize the range of the fall off. And now I've created a nice little arcing motion for the foot. If I wanted to also adjust the hips to compensate for that, I can grab those keys there, and again, I can just create this kind of nice fall off for the hips based on the range of keys that I have selected. So now what I've done is I've created an edit on top of the underlying animation. I could actually remove that edit, but if I go back to the original file, it will be intact. I didn't do anything destructive there. I just created a kind of a layer on top of that. So let's play that back, and we'll see what this looks like. We'll pull back just a little bit. And you can see here that now he jumps, he runs and jumps, and he clears the crates just fine. So in the same way that I created that kind of fall off with the value of the height of the feet and the hips, I also want to create kind of a fall off, a similar type fall off effect with time. So I actually want to change the timing of this animation, the rate of the animation. So what you'll notice is if I play this back, and I'll just set this to loop a couple of times. Let's see, is my looping on? Yeah, it's already on. So I'll just set this to loop a couple of times, and what you'll notice is that as he runs across, what's actually happening is it's a constant rate of motion, or I should say a linear rate of motion. He's basically moving at the same rate over the entire animation. So the jump is happening at the same speed as the walk, which is not natural at all. So what I want to actually happen is, as he's jumping, I want him to start off kind of quick, slow down at the top of the jump, and I want him to speed up as he's going towards the ground, as he's accelerating, as gravity's bringing him down, so it'll look more natural. So traditionally, I would have to do this by changing all of the keyframes on my animation. If you take a look at this animation, let's just grab the top node and show all these curves. That's actually a lot of keyframes and a lot of curves that I would have to manage, basically. So what I want to do is basically affect all these simultaneously. So we have this new tool called the retiming tool, which basically allows you to set down timing markers on multiple curves and multiple keys simultaneously. So I'm going to drop down a few markers here. And what I can do is, when I drop down the markers, it basically allows me to stretch and scale, squash and stretch, however you want to look at it, different sections of my curves. So if I make this section really small, what that's going to do is it's going to accelerate only the jump. So now I have a really fast jump. Likewise, if I take this back and I stretch it out really long or really broad, wide, however you want to say it, now he's going to jump really slowly, but in a kind of unnatural way. So that's cool that you can actually scale, sections of your curve, but what I really want to do is actually have a little bit more of kind of fine control over how these curves get stretched and distorted. So what I want to do is actually drop down another marker here, and I want to add some interior markers. So now I've got two bounding markers that are going to lock the ends of my curves, or my animation, and then I've got two interior markers that are going to allow me to shift around the timing. So what I want to do is actually speed up the beginning of the jump. So I'll take this guy and push it forward, and I want to speed up the end of the jump, take that guy and move it out, and at the same time I'm going to be slowing down the middle of the jump. So now when I play this back, you can see he starts out kind of quick, and then he gets slow at the top or the height of the jump, and then he speeds up on the way down. If I want to accelerate that even further, or exaggerate that, I should say, I can right-click on this marker, and I can actually lock the marker. If I can actually click in the right place, it would help. There we go. I can lock the marker. And now what I can do is I can take this entire section of the curve in a kind of uniform way, and I can stretch out only the middle. So you can lock any markers together so that you can temporarily freeze that section of the curve. And now I've kind of exaggerated this. So now he's going to slow down a lot in the middle and then speed up at the end. So you get the basic idea there. I can come in here and I can unlock this, and I can make this a little bit tighter, and I can just kind of keep massaging this until it looks right. And that should actually really exaggerate that landing. So now it's going to kind of pop down on the ground in a natural way. So anyway, you get the basic idea. This is a new tool that we added. It's very, very useful. It's one of my favorite new tools in the last release. It's kind of tool that an animator can just use every day, basically. And it works on lots of curves, or it works on individual curves. You can even do multiple characters. I could retime 3 characters all simultaneously using this tool. So let's move on, and we're going to talk a little bit. Let me do a quick time check. We're going to talk a little bit about the new animation import-export system that we added in May 2013. And what this is, it's called ATOM. ATOM's an acronym. It stands for Animation Transport. Wait, what does this stand for? Animation Transport Object Mechanism, but you can just say ATOM. But anyway, what it is basically an import-export system for animation that allows you to externalize your animation data and then apply that animation to other versions of your character, or even other characters altogether. It's not character exclusive. This could be a rig, like a car or a vehicle. This just could be a simple object, whatever. So what I have here is a character that's kind of walking by, and you'll see it's got a couple of things going on. I've got the base animation of my character that is actually creating the walk. I've got a secondary control on my character, which is a look at, a target, which is driving the head. And then I've got a third thing on my character, which is actually a layer. And this is an animation layer, similar to what the reference edit I was talking about earlier. This is a different way of layering animation. It's basically an offset of the underlying animation, so that the default animation, which was applied to a different character initially, doesn't quite work with this character, so I created a simple offset that would allow me to modify the position of the hands relative to the base animation. So there's a lot going on here. What I really want to do is actually take all of this, put it into another file, and then reapply it to another character. So I'm going to take all of the controls on this character, and I'm basically going to export these using ATOM. So with Atom, I can export just the animation, I can export the constraint, I can export the layers. You can even export static values. So if you wanted to create a pose library for a character, you could actually export just the position or static values of the pose, and then use that as a way of applying poses to characters. With all that said, what I'm going to do is actually create a new animation file. If I go into my data menu here, or rather my data folder here, I'll just create a new animation file. And now what I want to do is actually take that file and bring it into another character. Before I do that, though, I actually want to talk about one more aspect, and that is the filtering system. It's actually we call it template, but think of it as like a filter for the animation. So you can actually take a piece of animation, and then when you bring it into another character, you can say, I really only want the left arm, or I really only want the right arm, or I really only want the head, or maybe I want the upper body, or maybe I want the lower body. So it just gives you a way of controlling how you bring animation in and what part of the animation you bring in. So what I'm going to do is take all of the nodes, and I'm going to create a template, and it's just a list of nodes, basically. So I'll create a file called my template. I'll just save that out, and what that's going to do is it's going to actually just build the file, and then from that I want to insert what are called views or filters, for lack of a better word. So I'll take the entire upper body, so that's the hands, that's the arms, that's the head, that's the eye, or rather aim constraint for the head, and I want to create an upper body view. So I would just come in here and say, for that template, give me a snapshot or a view of the upper body. I would save that out, and then I would go in and do the same thing for the lower body. I would grab the hips, I would grab the feet, I would grab the base controller, I would come in here and say, okay, well, I also want to filter the lower body, and that just nests that, or rather kind of implants that or inserts that into the template. So then I could create an arm view and a foot view, or whatever it may be. So one thing you'll notice is that this is, just take a look at this character and take a look at his rig. It's a humanoid character. It's a custom rig, of course, but it's a humanoid character. But I want to apply this to a different character. So I'm going to open up a different target character that is similar, but it's not the same. So you'll notice the look of the rig is actually different. The proportions are slightly different. The controllers are oriented or positioned slightly differently. The look at is actually different. It's a different object, but what you'll notice is it's actually not connected to my character. The animation layers that I was showing before, there's no animation layers on this character. I have a clean slate to work with. So what I want to do is actually import that animation, and I want to actually apply parts of the animation that I just created in the last file to this character. So I'm going to start, actually, let me just get rid of a few of these settings, and I'll talk about that in a second. I'm going to start by loading my template. So I created the template called my template. I'll just load that in, and that will automatically recognize those two views that I created, upper body and lower body. So I'm going to set this to upper body. I'm just going to grab the hand, and then the template is going to allow me to find all of the other associated parts for the upper body. So I'll just set that to template, import. I want to basically bring in my new animation file, the one that I created on the fly over there. And then I want to go in and replace all, or rather apply all the upper body animation. And bam, now I have all the upper body animation from that other character. So one thing you'll notice is that not only did it apply the upper body animation, remember, this wasn't even connected before. It actually went in and it made the connection to the look at for me. So I've got this target, which was doing nothing before, and now it's automatically connected. It's not only animated, but it's connected to the rig. So it'll actually not only bring in animation, it'll actually go in and connect parts of your rig that may not be connected. So this would allow you to insert characters into different environments and have those constrained into those different environments based on the situation or based on the circumstance that the character's in. So finishing off here, I'll just switch over into lower body mode, and I'll do the same thing. I'll grab the foot and say, well, I really want to bring in a different lower body animation. I'm going to use the same one, but this could be completely different. When I apply that, it finds all the lower body parts, and then it adds that animation. So this obviously doesn't look very good because his hands are moving in FK, his feet are kind of moving forward, but his body's not going along for the ride. So it looks pretty painful, actually. What I want to do is actually correct that. The problem is, and this is a very common problem, is that the naming convention on my character is different. So remember, the other character was that dummy kind of mannequin-looking thing? So I had that character named Dummy. This is Spaceman, so I've got my character named Spaceman. So when I brought the animation in, it didn't understand how to make the change from Dummy to Spaceman. So because it's an XML-based system, I could actually write tools, like externalized tools, that could actually process all this and make different versions of my animation for different characters. Or on the front end, I can actually just do a simple search and replace. So I can say, okay, well, I know the other character was named Dummy. I know this character's named Spaceman, so let's just go in, and if I find any nodes that are named inappropriately, or if they're named dummy, I'm just going to switch them to Spaceman. And now it's going to go in and correct the import of the animation. So it brings the animation in, it does the switch between the namespaces, and now it's applied correctly to my new character. And you'll also notice that it did bring in the animation layers. I can't remember if I mentioned that or not, but it did bring in the animation layers as well. So it's a very flexible, very robust, very powerful, kind of pipeline-friendly animation import-export system, which is kind of long overdue. So anyway, with all that said, I want to switch gears. I've got about 10 minutes here, so I'm going to show 2 quick features on my 2013 SAP, Service Advantage Pack, which I mentioned at the beginning of the demo. For those of you that walked up towards the end, basically what it is the Service Advantage Pack, which we announced here at the show, which is a subscription drop for customers that are on subscription. If you bought Maya 2013 and you have subscription, then you automatically get access to the Service Advantage Pack. And we tend to put just a couple of key features in a Service Advantage Pack. And this in this one, we have 2 important features, and one of those is DirectX functionality directly in the Maya viewport. So now, when you go to the preferences, you have the option under my display settings of loading Maya in 2 modes. So by default, Maya has historically been OpenGL. It's always been OpenGL. In the latest release, or in the upcoming release, we now support DirectX. So you can switch into DirectX mode, you can reboot Maya, and when you go into Viewport 2.0, you'll be rendering your objects with DirectX, and you can load DirectX shaders. So what I want to do is actually go in and just talk a little bit about the shader that we created. So this is an HLSL shader, a .fx file. So if you have game shaders and you want to view those in Maya, you can do that. But what we've also done is we've created a kind of an example shader. It's a very functional shader, but it has a lot of built-in functionality. It's kind of a Swiss Army knife of shaders that is called the Uber shader. And the Uber shader is an Uber shader that gives you a ton of different effects, and you can use it in a lot of different ways. For instance, the shader on the face mask here is actually the same shader that is on the body, which is the same shader that's on the gun, which is the same shader that's creating these glow effects and so on. So this is the minion character from the game that I was showing before. So if I grab the shader, I mean, we've got basic settings in here where I can go in and I can control my specular map. I can go in and I can control things like my specular power. Basic stuff you've seen before. Normal maps, I can go in and load normal maps, and then I've got a normal map offset or normal map height that I can go in and tweak. But we also have some other interesting things in here. We have, for instance, an ambient emissive map, which allows me to create glowing effects. So if I pull back here, you'll see that I've got a couple of different ambient effects. I've got the ambient effect, which is basically creating kind of a skylight effect. I've got another ambient effect, which is creating kind of an effect from the ground, almost like a glowing effect from the ground. And then I've got a third effect, which is actually creating a filtered or a masked emissive effect, basically almost like a glow on the back of the character. So this is kind of the rocket booster or whatever that is actually being lit with a secondary map. So another kind of effect that we can create is reflection. So the reflection, this is a real-time reflection map, is basically the same exact shader, but it's been tweaked a little bit to look different. So I'm actually going to go in and select this shader, and we'll talk about some of these parameters. So for instance, I've got under my reflection, I've, of course, turned reflection on and off, but I've also got intensity values that I can drive here. I've got a blur value where I can go in and get a nice crisp reflection or a nice kind of muted reflection. And then I've got a Fresnel effect that allows me to control the fall off. I'm actually missing a transparency map or an alpha map that I should be able to see in here, but it's not. I'm missing it in this file. But what this would actually be controlling is the basic shift between the reflection and the transparency. So if I hide this, you can actually see what's on the inside. This is the actual evil minion character that's driving the robot. And if I go in and select his shader, it's the exact same shader, but it's giving me a completely different look. So here I have an actual kind of glowing kind of skin effect, kind of an alien skin effect, which is basically being created with something called translucency. So the translucency is basically giving me almost like a subsurface scattering type effect, and then I've got sliders that allow me to control the fall off. I've got these ramp values that allow me to control the coloring of the translucency. And it gives me, again, kind of an alien skin effect. You could make this look more human if you needed to. But the main point I'm illustrating is that this shader does all of these different things from a single shader, and it's all being rendered in DirectX. So the last thing I want to show is a scene assembly tool. And I don't have a lot of time to spend on this, but the scene assembly tool is basically it's not a tool, but a workflow that is basically the ability to quickly build and populate environments and then manage how you see those environments. So what you'll see here is I open this scene, And this is the full game level, and it basically starts to populate as I open this file with all of the various assets that I want to work with. So what I can do is, what I'm doing now is I'm actually viewing a cache mode. So these are Alembic caches that are being loaded directly to the GPU, so I get very fast interactive times, I get very, very fast frame rates, but I'm not actually seeing the full detail of my model. If I do want to see the full detail, I can just grab any one of these models, I can right-click, go to my scene assembly section, and I can switch to different representations of these models. So if I wanted to see a really simple version, I can go to Bounding Box. If I want to see an even simpler version, I can go to Locator. That just gives me a position, a point in space. That actually can be edited, and then if I go in and I swap this out with the detailed version, that will just inherit that edit, basically. So at any point, I can go between these different representations. So if I wanted to optimize my scene, what I would typically probably do is basically take all this that I'm not looking at, and I would just switch this over into locator mode. That will flush out all the geometry. It'll give me a very simple representation of where and what that geometry was, and then I can go in and focus on just the areas that I care about. So now I can come in here and I can start to assemble parts of my level based on whatever point of view I need to see. So this is all scriptable. So I've written a little tool called Layout Tools that actually takes advantage of these scene assembly nodes. So what I can do is I can build a library of objects, and I can create different representations of those objects. So let's say I wanted to bring in a building. I'll bring in a structure here. So let's say I'm looking at this point of view and I say, okay, I really need a building right there. I don't want to have to go to a file browser and look for it. I just want to go to a little visual asset browser and just bring that into my scene. So I'm going to drag this building in, just click, drag, drop it in, and then I'll just go in and I'll scale it. Maybe I need to go in and I need to position it a little bit, something like that. And now what I want to do is actually go in and actually change the look of this building. So right now I'm seeing a middle version. I want to use my scene assembly to create a variant of this building. So I'm going to switch to, for instance, a tall version of the building. Or maybe I want to switch to a short version of the building. So what this is doing is it's swapping out the representation based on a scene assembly node that's pointing to lots of different versions of this file. I could even go in and I could actually change the building itself. So let's say, well, I don't really want that building. I want to point to a different building. So I'll come in here and say, well, I really want building B. I'll switch over, and there I get building B, or I get building D, or whatever building I actually happen to be looking for. I have to actually type the right letter. That helps. There we go. Anyway, you get the basic idea. So what I want to do now is actually go in and just bring in a couple of other things. I've got a prop section here where I can go in and I can drag in different props to fill in the blank space of my level. I can just quickly go in here and start to assemble this. And then when I get to the point where I actually need to see the detail of this level, all I have to do is just say, okay, from this point of view, I need to actually see more detail. I need to see my textures. I might need to edit my meshes. I'll just switch over into detailed mode. It'll go in and populate my level with the high-res versions of these objects. So again, this is new in the Service Advantage pack, so it will be out shortly. And when it comes out, definitely take a look at it. I'm going to post all this stuff online as examples. You can actually download this level assembly tool that I built, and you can use it as kind of a way of testing out this workflow. But I've pretty much gone through my time. I'm going to hand it over to Sean. If anybody has any questions, feel free to come up and talk to me on the side. But thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.